CBD is not a miracle. It's not. The companies out there saying this, they're marketing to you. I think CBD is a great tool for a well-rounded wellness program, and it can help fill in some gaps. So like for me, I had insomnia all my life. CBD helped me with that. For my wife, she has issues with anxiety. She tends to be a more high stress person. CBD helped her just be a little bit more calm and slow things down. So it's not something that's going to fix all your problems, but it is something that can aid an already good wellness routine or help you develop a well-rounded wellness routine.
Hey there, I'm Amy Connell. Welcome to Graced Health, the podcast for women who want simple and grace-filled ways to take care of themselves and enjoy a little chocolate. I'm a certified personal trainer and nutrition coach who wants you to know your eating, movement, and body don't have to be perfect. You just need to be able to do what you're called to do. Okay, what are your thoughts on CBD? Not only have I heard various schools of thoughts, I've had differing opinions myself. Sometimes there's a hesitance or perhaps fear among people, particularly in the Christian community, and I know a lot of us identify as Christians, about CBD. After all, the root word of cannabis is associated with THC, and that too has varying opinions. I was kind of skeptical about CBD until I started doing my own research. Part of that research involved going to Dr. Harris's Strive for Great Health podcast. I've done this for several issues in several areas and always appreciate how much research goes into Dr. Richard Harris's show. When I started thinking about having an episode on CBD, I knew Dr. Harris was the right person to help us. He is a man of both medicine and faith and does a substantial amount of research on all of the topics that he has on his podcast. If you've been suffering from general wellness issues, it may be time to consider CBD or just listen to this episode and do your own research and create your own thoughts surrounding it. However, you will hear Dr. Harris recommend for the stronger medical issues, work with a doctor who understands CBD rather than just dosing yourself. You'll hear me in this propose to Dr. Harris that I would like him to be the official doctor of the Graced Health podcast. This is his third visit to the show. He has also been on helping us understand our gut health and then also how to protect your brain from memory decline, both of which have been just enormously popular. And I will link to those in the show notes. Now, if this is your first time hearing Dr. Harris on the show, let me tell you a little bit about him. He is called a double doc because he has his Doctor of Pharmacy from the University of Texas at Austin and his medical degree from the McGovern School of Medicine. So then following his residency at UTMB, Dr. Harris worked for a large practice in Houston, but ultimately left to pursue his goal of promoting holistic lifestyle medicine. And he really does have a holistic approach to all of this. Dr. Harris is one of today's leading health and wellness speakers. He is well-versed in a range of health and wellness topics. And as I mentioned, he is also the host of the Strive for Great Health podcast. Before we bring on Dr. Harris, I invite you to go grab my new online, on-demand movement class called Be Complete. Be Complete is an acronym for all the ways we need to move as we get older, but we don't take the time to do, wrapped up in one class. I made this for me. I made this for you because who has time to do all of this? These moves in Be Complete help strengthen your core, balance, mini muscles, and focus on the mind-body aspect of our movement. Also, if this episode or another one you've listened to is valuable to you, could you do something valuable for me and share it with one friend who you feel would benefit from the information? Of course, you can always put it on the socials, but I believe that friend to friend, word of mouth is the best way to spread the love in podcasting, and I'm always so grateful when you do this. Okay, let's bring on Dr. Harris. Dr. Harris, I am so glad to have you back. Welcome.
Thank you, Amy, for having me back on the show. It's always a pleasure to connect with you and talk about stuff that we are both passionate about, and that is improving health and wellness with balance.
Absolutely. Yeah, we were talking a little bit before we got on about how balance is so needed, and we live in such an all or nothing society. And I will say, I was thinking before we got on, I might just make, whether or not you want to be or not, I might designate you as the official doctor of the Graced Health podcast. You have just been provided such a wealth of information. Just listeners, if you are relatively new to the Graced Health podcast, I want you to go back and listen to Dr. Harris when we talked about how to have a healthy gut and why it's important, and then also how to protect your brain from memory decline. So I will put those in the show notes, but if you haven't listened to those, go back and listen, because those are really, really good quality, applicable information. And people went bananas over both of them. So I'm really glad to have you here back. Now, this is a little sort of a different topic, but I know that you are very well educated in CBD. And in fact, I was interested in learning about it. So my first line of like, okay, I want to learn more about CBD. So what am I going to do? Well, I went over to the Strive for Great Health podcast and I listened to your episode. And so I thought that this would be a good conversation to have over here. If people are comfortable with it, they may not be comfortable with that. We'll get into that in a minute. So let's just start off by defining what CBD is.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a lot of talk about CBD right now, some for good reason. Of course, there's a lot of charlatans out there. We'll talk about that. But let's start off with how CBD works and how this is even applicable to us as humans. So there's something called the endocannabinoid system, or the ECS. And this is a system in our bodies that's mostly found in our brains, in our nervous system. It's also part of the functioning of our white blood cells. And it's so apropos that we're talking about balance, because that is literally what the ECS does in our body. It is a balancing system. So what the ECS does in the brain is it makes sure that the signals sent between the different nerves, that it's not too strong or too little. So if things are a little too overstimulated, the ECS will kick in and try to bring things down. If things aren't working enough, the ECS can also work to bring that up. And we have two main molecules in our body. We call them endogenous cannabinoids, meaning these are made by our own bodies, called anandamide and 2-AG. So we have a system, and this system is present in many different organisms that works on this pathway. And then what is CBD? So CBD is a molecule, we call it a phytocannabinoid. And what phytocannabinoid means is a plant-based cannabinoid. And what CBD does, and this is really actually interesting when you dive into the mechanism, CBD actually doesn't really interact with the ECS system in our bodies. There's what we call receptors. These are like locks, and the 2-AG and the anandamide I talked about are keys. And so when the key enters the lock, things happen inside your cells, just like you would open a door with a key. What CBD does is it actually potentiates our body's own endocannabinoids. So it makes them work better. It also acts as a decoy to what degrades those. So it's like when you had your friend in middle school distract the teacher so you could go and do something behind the teacher's back, right? That's one of the ways. I
have no idea what you're talking about, but I hear about that.
That's one of the ways. Oh, we did that all the time. But that's one of the ways that CBD actually works is it serves as a decoy. And so that being said, it has a wide variety of effects in the body. And for me, I personally use CBD. I think it's one of the best balancing agents that we can have out there for just making sure that our nervous system and our brain health is functioning optimally.
I was following you with a lot of it, but when you say it serves as a decoy to what?
Yeah, so there's something called fatty acid amide hydrolase. It's what really long name here. And this is what breaks down the body's own cannabinoids. And so what CBD does is it occupies it. So that
Okay.
it's busy, so it can't get rid of what our bodies naturally produce. And so that's how and why I love CBD so much, because it's one of the few agents out there that you can put inside your body, and it just makes what your body already does better.
Okay. Okay. All right. Now, how, let's see, I'm trying to think about how I want to word this question. So, a lot of us have heard of this, cannabis, cannabinoid. Like there's some root words there that might make people feel kind of uncomfortable because talk to us about the relationship between CBD and how that's related to THC and marijuana, because, there's probably a lot of people in my community who are like, I don't know, that's a little too close to home. And so what kind of relationship is there with that?
Sure. And that's a great question. So the Farm Bill legalized the sale of hemp and hemp-based products. And so there are multiple different cannabis type plants. One of
Hmm.
them, cannabis sativa, is where THC comes from. And cannabis sativa has a high concentration of THC, somewhere 20 to 30%. Some of the new strains are even higher. Now, hemp, on the other hand, has very low concentrations of THC. So it's in the cannabis family. It's
Okay.
related to cannabis sativa, where THC comes from, but it's different. It has low concentrations of THC. And so, in fact, the Farm Bill says that you cannot sell a CBD product if it has more than 0.3% THC. That's the cutoff. And 0.3% THC is not enough THC to have any type of physiological effect. It's too low of a dose. So then let's take this even further. Let's look at the mechanism of action, because THC, the active ingredient in marijuana, works on the same endocannabinoid system. But what THC does is it actually activates the system. CBD is a very poor activator of those receptors, of those locks. THC actually does. So they work differently. CBD potentiates our body's own natural processes, so it doesn't actually do much at the receptors at all, but THC does. And so the main difference you can have is that THC makes us hungry, right? Munchies, right? We've all heard about that. But THC also can have psychoactive effects, meaning paranoia, hallucinations, those types of things. That doesn't actually happen with CBD because of how it works at the molecular level. And so, in fact, when we use THC for medicinal purposes, a lot of times we combine THC with CBD. And the reason for that is so people don't get the psychoactive effects. There's studies showing that CBD blocks the psychoactive effects of THC. And there's also this might be going deeper than people want to know, but there's something called the entourage effect, because there's I think it's over 100 now different types of cannabinoids that have been found. So there's multiple different types: THC, CBD, CBG, CBC. And what they do is in the plant, they all exist together. And so these things actually help each other work. And so when you have multiple of these cannabinoids together, it seems to be that they can work better for certain conditions. And that's why we'll combine THC and CBD. But for the people who are worried about CBD having those psychoactive effects, it doesn't. If they're worried about a drug test, if your product does not contain THC, you're not going to test positive on a drug test, because they're different molecules. And the drug tests now are very sensitive, meaning they can pick up small amounts of the molecules, and they can also differentiate between different strands and different things. So there's actually data. There's a study out of Australia where they had people take high doses of CBD and none of them tested positive on a drug test. I take CBD every day. I've been drug tested multiple times and I've never tested positive. So that's the other major concern I hear people talk about. It's those two things. And overall, for most people and the doses that most people would take, CBD is very safe.
Got it. Okay. All right. So let's talk some about what it is used for, because one of the comments that I have heard some people make sometimes, and this we're going to kind of combine this with what's it used for, but also it's like, I don't know, this just kind of sounds like snake oil. Like there are so many things like, oh, you have a headache, take CBD. You have a backache, take CBD. You have anxiety, take CBD. And they're like, that just seems a little too good to be true. So I would love to hear your thoughts on that. And then tell us some about like, what are the specific science back? Because I know you know the science of like what are some of the issues that we can have that CBD may be able to help.
Sure. So I think you have to separate this out. When you use CBD, there's using CBD for just wellness and balance, and there's using CBD to treat a medical condition because the dosages are much different. So CBD just for overall wellness, like feeling more calm, improving your sleep, helping to recover after workouts, dealing with occasional aches and pains after, stressful workout or something like that. Those dosages are much lower. Those dosages, usually most people are taking between 20 to 40 milligrams a day. On the high end, maybe 80 for some of those conditions. And it can kind of fluctuate just depending on where you are and how you feel. Now, treatment doses, what medical studies use CBD for: epilepsy, pain, and coming off narcotics. So using CBD as a bridge to get people off narcotics. And then anxiety. These are really the areas where medical literature shows effectiveness to CBD. But these doses are way higher than what people use recreationally. Again, these are treatment doses. They're not just overall promoting health and wellness doses. So I think that's part of the disconnect, because the treatment doses for CBD for anxiety, it's like 300 milligrams, 150 to 300 milligrams. For pain, you might see doses that high. And usually the pain studies, they combine it with THC for that additive effect. Mm-hmm. And then for seizures, the doses is far higher. The medicinal THC product, you can go, or CBD product, there are some studies where doses as high as like 1,500 to even, I think, 3,000 milligrams, right? And those doses are safe. People didn't have horrible side effects or anything like that in the clinical studies, but they're much higher than what you would take for general maintenance. And so what I tell people is, because it's not risk-free, CBD can interact with medications. CBD can cause stomach upset and issues with nausea or vomiting or upset stomach or diarrhea. Those are the most common things identified in studies. If you're using it to treat a medical condition, you need to go see a physician who knows about CBD, right? So if you want to use it to treat pain or anxiety, because actually there's some data showing that if you don't use the appropriate dose for anxiety, it can make anxiety worse.
Oh, really? Okay.
So if you use low doses, it can make it worse. And there's also data showing that it doesn't really work for moderate or for low level anxiety, that it really works the more dysfunctional things get. And that makes sense when we go back to that mechanism, that it's about balance. So if your system isn't really out of balance, it's not going to do that much to fix the problem. But if it's way out of balance, then it can, but you need higher doses. And so that's the first question I ask. Well, why do you want to take it? Are you treating something? Or are you just trying to just get more restful sleep, feel a little bit more calm? Are you trying to treat occasional aches and pains? You worked out too hard, you bumped your wrist, something like that. If you're using it for that, then the over-the-counter stuff is great. If you're trying to treat a medical condition, you need to see a physician who knows about CBD to do so.
Okay, that makes sense. I know a lot of my community are moms of young adults and adolescents. Is there a minimum age that is appropriate to be able to take this?
So
let's just talk about not from the medical. So obviously, if there's a medical condition, get thyself to a doctor. However, your kid has an extra tough practice, or does something that it's just like they just need a little bit of help. So I'm just wondering if is that appropriate or not?
Yeah. So as far as literature wise, I can't comment on that because I'm an adult only doc. But I will say
Okay.
this: when we have children, I would feel completely safe giving my kids CBD.
Okay.
Completely safe doing that. And
As a
since
dad.
as a
Yeah.
dad, right?
Sure.
And to basically any age, you just have to change around the dosing, right? I mean, we tend to be a little bit too sensitive nowadays. Our grandparents used to give our parents whiskey to make them fall asleep. They turned out fine, right?
Yeah. Most of
So
them.
most of yeah, right, most of them. But that was like a common thing. You're teething,
Yeah.
rub some whiskey on there, right?
Yeah.
And we didn't create a whole generation of alcoholics by doing that. So I think we get a little sensitive sometimes, especially when it comes to kids. Now, the reason I feel comfortable doing this is because I know how it works. And I know that I'm not introducing something that is affecting systems in our body that aren't already there and don't already work, right?
Okay.
And the fact that we have studies with medicinal doses and seizures, which are particularly happening in children, that show safety. So that's why I feel comfortable using the recreational doses when I have kids on my kids.
Got it. Okay. All right. Now, I do know a little bit. So, I actually had reached out to you and you directed me toward some CBD lotion that you have on your, I think, an affiliate for, but you've got on your website. So, I know that there's lotion. I know that there's something called tincture, which I'm going to let you talk to that about. There's a lot of different types. I mean, my goodness, I'm trying to think about where I was the other day in the most random of random places. And it was like there was CBD and something else. I mean, it just seems like it's everywhere. So, right now, talk to us some about the different types and the different methods of, I don't know what's the right word, not ingesting, but, of utilizing CBD.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are. There's a lot of different dosage forms. It's kind of like medications, right? There's so many different dosage form of medications. There's gummies. Typically, I'm not a huge fan of gummies because most companies just load them with sugar, and
Mm-hmm.
it takes a really strong company to make a gummy where you're actually absorbing the vitamins and minerals and stuff from that. So I typically don't recommend gummies. Another is the tinctures, right? And a tincture is just an old word for and that's how basically something is formulated. These are liquid forms of CBD. So the CBD is suspended or dissolved in some type of liquid. Usually for CBD, since it's fat soluble, it's some type of a vehicle like medium chain triglycerides or something like that. There are some water soluble CBDs, meaning that it can dissolve in water and can be absorbed that way. So the tinctures you typically place underneath your tongue or in between your cheek and your teeth. The reason for that is you can get significant absorption that way and directly into the bloodstream. So it is faster than the oral route than swallowing it. So swallowing it, you're going to slow down the absorption and the absorption is not going to be as much. So that's why a lot of the products tell you hold it under your tongue for like 45 seconds to a minute and then swallow it. There are actually CBD vape cartridges. And a lot of the people that I know in the industry will use these for people who have chronic pain. And the reason for that is it's because it's the actual fastest route of administration. So you get the fastest onset. So what they'll do is they'll use that plus like an oral, either a tincture or a capsule. So you have a fast acting and then a slow acting. Right. And that's another thing. There are capsules as well. For people who don't want to mess with the liquid or something like that, they can just swallow it in a traditional capsule. So these things are better used if you're using it for just overall you feel kind of inflamed, if you want to get more restful sleep, if you just want to help yourself feel a little bit more calm, maybe you just kind of achy all over. Even if you're sick, their CBD does have some properties, some antibacterial and antiviral properties. And then there's the creams, the lotions. The only difference between a cream and a lotion is the base. Lotions are water-based. Creams are oil-based. No, sorry. So creams and lotions are both like water-based. They're basically kind of the same. It's just the concentration is a little different. Ointments are oil-based. So ointments are a little better to stick on places that tend to sweat, right? So here in Houston, everybody's sweating right now.
Everywhere.
Everywhere at all times. So,
Yeah.
Ointments are better in that situation. So what are the local stuff good for? If you have, let's say, a injury in the same place always hurts. So for instance, for me, I have sciatica. So I have a CBD cream that has capsaicin and CBD in it. I love it. It works very well for those occasional aches and pains that come with my back. So if you have a very local defined pain, let's say you have headaches and they're, in the temple area, they're due to stress, so the muscles of the head and neck and face are tight. Those are the type of things that you can use the topicals for.
I have kind of a lower back thing that I've been working through, and I have noticed the lotion makes a huge difference. I mean, it is a game changer for sure. I don't use it every night, but yeah, I mean, there are times that I'm more inflamed. There are times that I just am more achy or it's just squawking at me. And I have found that to be really effective. One of the things that I alluded to earlier was, I mean, I feel like you can just go into a gas station in the middle of nowhere and they have CBD on the shelf. I mean, it just seems like it's everywhere. And as I have been learning about supplements in general, I had a guest on, Hallie Brooke, and she was talking about the importance of having vitamins and supplements that are third party tested and how important it is. So that way, what you're getting in there. And I have to imagine that not all CBD is created equal. So how can we discern the difference between quality CBD and imposters or things that may include elements that we don't necessarily want to be putting in our body?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of things that you should look out for. The first choice is, do you want a broad spectrum versus full spectrum versus CBD isolate? So broad spectrum CBD is CBD that contains other phytocannabinoids, so other plant-based cannabinoids, and they may have up to that legal limit of 0.3% THC. They may not. It just depends on the particular species or subspecies of the hemp plant that company uses. Broad spectrum CBD is CBD that contains CBD and the other phytocannabinoids, but doesn't contain THC. And then the CBD isolate just has CBD by itself. Now, in general, I'm a fan of full spectrum just because of that entourage effect. It's also the least processed of the CBD types. But it all depends.
Full spectrum.
This is full spectrum, yes.
Okay.
But it all depends on your comfort level, right? If you want to make sure that you don't have any THC in there, broad spectrum or an isolate is the way to go. If you just want CBD without the other cannabinoids, CBD isolate is the way to go. But there's other ways that you can check this. So one of the things I make sure of is that there is a certificate of analysis. And what the certificate of analysis is basically that company has paid a third party to test their CBD product. And they test it for potency, meaning if it says it's 25 milligrams, there's 25 milligrams in there. They test it for contamination. The good ones do. Heavy metals, bacteria, mold, make sure there's no contamination. And then they have all of the batches. So if you look at these products, there will be like a lot number or a batch number. And you can go and see which product that you have, the COA, the certificate of analysis, shows. So if they only have like one batch number or one lot number on the website, that could be kind of questionable because they may not be updating it with each new batch. Another thing to look for. So
do your homework.
Right. You have to do your homework. Don't just buy some smoke shop CBD. There may not be any CBD in it. Hemp seed oil doesn't have any CBD in it. It just has extract from hemp seeds. The CBD content of hemp seeds is almost zero. It's very, very small. Now, I'm not saying there's not any benefit to hemp seed oil. There's lots of antioxidants and other things in hemp seed oil. You don't want to cook with it, but if you just want to, take some of it, that's perfectly fine. Another thing to look for is if you get like a broad spectrum or a full spectrum, look at the color. It should be a nice amber color. That lets you know that you have a good CBD. Where was it grown? Was it grown in the US? Was it grown outside of the US? I prefer organically grown CBD from the US. Usually that's grown in either California or Kentucky. Those are the two big areas where CBD is grown here in the US. What else do I look for? I look for the language on their website. Are they using marketing language, or are they talking about their quality? Companies that really have quality products lead with that.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's their differentiation factors. Like, we want to be the highest quality product on the market. So that's another thing to look for. And then the final thing that I really look for is, what type of products do they have? And what's the difference in the products? So a lot of companies will have different products for different things. So there's something called terpenes, and terpenes are other plant molecules. And terpenes are things like what makes lavender purple, or what makes lemon peels have that certain smell. They're very aromatic and very colorful type things. And so these terpenes all have different effects. And so really good products will have different CBD products with different terpene profiles for different things. Like, you might have a terpene profile that's higher in certain things that help with relaxation, or certain things that help with inflammation. And that's another thing that I'll look for, because that lets me know that a company who does that and actually has proof that the terpene profiles are different has really focused on the science.
Okay. Those are really good things to do. So my personal approach is I go look and see what Dr. Richard Harris has on his website. And I just get that because I know you've done all the homework.
Yep. Yeah. So, when CBD first started booming, I got offers like every single day. Hey, rep my CBD, try my CBD. I turned down like almost all of them. I would try it. And then finally I met the people who own CBD Health Collection, looked at their stuff, tried their CBD, talked to the owners, and realized they really care about research. Like, their new product, they have a water soluble product. They paid a university to do research to make sure that their water soluble product was getting absorbed. Like,
Oh,
these are the
wow.
kind of
That's
people
cool.
that you want to work with,
Yeah.
people who are paying research facilities and universities to research their products to make sure that they have high-end products. And so that's one of the things I always ask is, like, is this company doing research on their products? Because if companies are doing research on their products, they know that they have a quality product and they want to stand by the research. So anybody who asks me, oh, you've got a water soluble CBD, it's probably not water soluble. Aha, I have a white paper. Here you go.
Yeah.
Done by a
Yeah.
university. So do you have any more questions? Because I have data I can stand on.
That makes sense. Okay. Anything I missed in this? Because I know you have talked about it a lot, and I know that I simplified this conversation some. And I will link the show that you did on the Strive for Great Health podcast if people want to dig in a little bit more, even learn more about the science, because you go into more depth there. But is there anything here that you're like, you know what, this is what I really want Amy's community to know or understand?
CBD is not a miracle. It's not. The companies out there saying this, they're marketing to you. I think CBD is a great tool for a well-rounded wellness program, and it can help fill in some gaps. So, like, for me, I had insomnia all my life. CBD helped me with that. For my wife, she has issues with anxiety. She tends to be a more high stress person. CBD helped her just be a little bit more calm and slow things down. So it's not something that's going to fix all your problems, but it is something that can aid an already good wellness routine or help you develop a well-rounded wellness routine.
Well, that's a great point, and I'm thank you for bringing that up because all of the CBD in the world is not going to counteract a diet that is pulled through the window of your car and a sedentary life and not eating any fruits and vegetables. And and my community knows I am all about grace and balance, and like I don't think that everything has to be perfect. However, those are the things that help with a well-rounded wellness lifestyle. And I love that you mentioned that and bring that up because I think our American society is really, I don't want to use the word lazy, but we just kind of want a magic pill about
Hmm.
whatever it is. And it can be easy to think, well, I'll just take some CBD and this will help my anxiety. When in fact, there are other things out there like sleep and eating a lot of fruits and vegetables. And, all of those kinds of things can help along with therapy. Right. But I think that that's a really great point. I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like anything else. I always tell people if you look at things like PRP, right? PRP injections are huge, they're everywhere. They cost a lot of money. And I tell people, think about this for a second. If your system is disorganized and diseased, you're only taking something from your system, isolating something, and injecting it back in, and you're expecting it to work miracles. These things work better when your system is better functioning. It's the same thing with CBD. CBD is going to work better for the wellness portion when your system works better because it's potentiating your body's natural way of doing things.
Yeah, that's a great point. Very, very good point. Thank you for that. Okay, I've got a couple questions I ask all my guests. So I've asked you this before, but it was a since you came on first, which I think was about a year and a half ago. So who knows? Things may have changed. But I do love learning about people's tattoos because I have found that when people decide to put something on their body for the rest of their lives, they often have a good story behind it. So I was wondering if you have a tattoo, if you would mind sharing what it is. And if you don't have one but had to get one, what would it be and where would it go?
Yeah, so I don't have a tattoo. I
Okay.
think
So
probably now that
nothing's
I'm on,
changed.
nope, no. I guess now that I'm almost 40, the likelihood of me getting a tattoo is probably super small. If I did have to get a tattoo, I don't know. My sister has a lot of tats. I think she's got over 100 something hours in the chair. And one of the
Wow.
tattoos that I really like that she has is she's got two Firebirds here on her chest. And my first car was a Firebird. And I love everything that the Phoenix represents, like being reborn in the fire, right? Like, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? Being reborn into that fire. And so I think that's what I would get is a tattoo
Okay.
that mirrors hers, so we could be tattoo brother and sister.
That's great. It's funny. This question came from the question that I asked someone one time. I was standing in line. I was at a conference for an ambassador that I was a group in and an ambassador, and she had a gorgeous phoenix
Mm,
all along her arm. And so I asked her about it, and it was related to her father. And I mean, like I didn't know, I've never met this girl in my life, but she got it. It was related to like her father and when he passed, and it was such a sweet and powerful story. And so that's what has caused me to start asking these questions because I just think that there's so much meaning behind it. So that's funny that you talk about the phoenix. Okay, now do you have a meaningful Bible verse you would like to share? I know you're a man of faith, and that is important to everything that you do. We didn't talk a lot about it today because we were getting to the science of it, but I know that your faith is very important to you. So, do you have a verse that you would like to share?
yeah, I think it's important in this conversation we had because it kind of fits in, and that is Philippians 4:6. Don't be anxious about anything; rather, bring up all your requests to God in your prayers and petitions, along with giving thanks. And there's so much to actually unpack there. And it's interesting because people who identify as Christians feel like they have a stronger locus of control. And the reason they feel like that is because giving up control to God makes them feel like they're more in control. And the more in control you feel, the less anxiety you have. And the second thing there is giving thanks. If you look at the data on gratitude, most people think gratitude is supposed to be about feeling good or feeling gracious about the things that we have. But actually, the benefit of gratitude is thinking on things where people were grateful for you. So it's doing things that help people and then reflecting on how you've actually helped people and made the world a better place.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that is I love that verse. I love the book of Philippians. It was probably the first one that I really spent a lot of time in a Bible study and got to understand it better. And so Philippians definitely has a special place in my heart. Real quickly, tell people how they can connect with you. I've mentioned your podcast a couple times, but go ahead and say that, and website and all of those other good things.
Yeah, the podcast, Strive for Great Health podcast. I don't podcast as much as I used to. I'm super busy these days, but there's still like 100 episodes, so you get a lot of content. I'm most active on Instagram and LinkedIn, even though I'm not that active anymore. But Instagram is Dr. Harris MD. And my website is theghwellness.com, or you can just type Dr. Harris, Great Health and Wellness.
Awesome. Okay. So new this season, I am asking my guests to offer up one simple thing for my community to remember, because we covered a lot of ground. So before we go, I'm going to let you have the last word. And what is the one simple thing you would like my community to remember?
Supplements are a supplement.
Very good. Must have that. Oh, see, now I'm not even giving you the last word. But we've got to have that foundation of wellness with it. That's great. Thank you so much. And that is all for today. Go out there and have a great day.